This episode is brought to you by our friends at Squiz. Squiz is a student experience platform that offers a full suite of solutions developed exclusively for higher education. Squiz has so many exceptional products that are worth checking out, but the two that I've been most impressed by are their custom site search product Funnelback and their website platform, which is a true DXP. And don't worry, I'll explain what that means in just a second. For the next wave of digital natives, search is not ancillary to navigation. Search is navigation. And Funnelback enables schools like yours to build custom smart site search. So that way your nursing program actually comes up when someone searches nursing instead of that one nursing faculty event registration page from like 2 years ago. And their DXP, it's so much more than a traditional website CMS. A CMS is meant for exactly what it claims to be: content management. It's an important part of your marketing tech stack and an important part of the student lifecycle. But that's just it. It's just a part. A DXP, a digital experience platform, is built to be the hub of your MarTech stack. It relies on powerful integrations, data management, and an open platform in order to create the kind of experiences simply not possible with a normal CMS. Say goodbye to the finicky plugins of WordPress and the crappy site architecture of Drupal that hurts your SEO, and get ready to meet the fastest, most powerful, and most personalized website platform for colleges and universities on the market. Today, the student experience begins online, not at school. And as an enrollment marketer, your job is to ensure that prospective students find what they are looking for as quickly and as easily as possible. Squiz is the secret friction reducers that schools across the globe are using to not just attract the next generation of students, but nurture them to the point of enrollment in a way that is conducive and not counter to how they consume information and make purchasing decisions. You can learn more about Squiz at enrollify.org/Squiz. Again, that's enrollify.org/Squiz.
When we look at paid and the nature of paid traffic, we call that a push channel. So we're pushing traffic to a site. We're specifically focusing on the bottom of the funnel, high conversion oriented keywords, as where organic and search engine optimization, we're a pull channel. We specifically focus on pulling in leads over time and being able to fill out the whole funnel. So at Archer we call that the student journey.
Alrighty, Ray. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am doing wonderful. It's a beautiful Wednesday morning in San Diego, so I can't complain.
Meanwhile, it's like hot, humid, and like hazy here in DC on this Wednesday afternoon. So I'm jealous, man. I'm jealous.
I actually love the humidity. I grew up in Puerto Rico as a kid, so love it.
There you go. Well, dude, that makes one of us. I am not a fan of humidity. I actually was born and raised in Hawaii, actually, on Oahu, and it's very humid there. But I was like, the minute I got out of there, and I was like, I can't go back. I just can't go back. I just wasn't built for humidity, I guess. But anyways, I'm excited to be talking to you today. We connected on Twitter just a couple weeks ago, I guess, and I threw out a couple challenges. Not that they were real challenges, but I tweeted a couple of scenarios out, and I was super just impressed with how you responded to these like SEO 101 scenarios. And I was like, ooh, I like this response. All right, got to get this guy on the show. So first and foremost, thanks for responding, and thanks for your willingness to come on the show.
Yeah, thank you. I think this speaks to my nature. I think the questions you asked were interesting because there's something that's relevant in the higher ed space, especially if you're running a program. How do I spend? How do I spend budget? How do I allocate it properly? How do I maximize the return on investment? So, I think that's right in my wheelhouse, and I really love that strategic aspect of marketing. Yeah. And it's always been something that I've been really passionate about. So.
Well, great, man.
Thank you for
Hey,
having me on.
yeah, of course, and our listeners are in for a real treat. So, you are the head of SEO at Archer Education. Archer is an Enrollify partner. We love our friends at Archer, and you all are a tech-enabled marketing, enrollment, and retention services for higher ed company. And one of the things that you and your team do is you spend a lot of time during the day helping schools think through how to rank better on key terms and key topics that are pertinent and relevant to their respective programs. So as we kick things off here, we're going to kind of do this big like SEO deep dive, which I'm pumped to do because we've talked about SEO on the pod before, but not nearly enough. And it's just such an important sort of like fundamental component of what it takes to effectively market and recruit students today. So it's a very, very timely topic. But as we kind of kick our conversation off, I was hoping you could just give us a quick definition of search engine optimization. Talk to us, in your own words about why it's such a relevant and important strategy for student marketing and recruitment.
Yeah. So, SEO, as I like to say, actually, I ask this as an interview question when I'm actually interviewing for position. Like, I'm like, what is SEO? And to me, SEO is increasing the quantity and quality of traffic to your site. And what that really means is we're not just bringing more traffic to your site. We're bringing more of the right type of traffic that converts and that goes from being, a user landing on your site to being a prospective student to being an applied student to being an enrolled student. So, when we look at the barrier for entry, when we look at all these different digital marketing channels, across higher ed, when you think about a cost per enrollment for, a paid channel, for example, those are often pretty high, especially as we bid on non-branded keywords. There's a lot of competition around there. If you don't really have, a large brand presence, it can be really difficult to bid and win on those non-branded keywords. So, organic gives you the chance to sort of fight back and also, when you look at SEO as a whole, we're able to, rank really well and get visibility for university on program terms, but we're also able to target outcomes that are beyond just those terms.
Yeah. I love how you've set this up too. And I think it's not worth sort of just, pushing through quickly the fact that paid search is just getting more and more and more expensive and competitive. And even from some of the data I was recently looking at, the quality of those inquiries and apps coming from those sort of more traditional paid channels, you got to generate a lot of quantity to get to that quality. And so I think what's cool about organic and the discussion that we're going to have today is really that it offers schools, especially like smaller, like niche programs or online programs, it really offers folks the ability to become thought leaders in a respective domain. And there's no like magic silver bullet to doing this well, as you know, and as we'll dive into. But what's cool is that if you do it, if you do start ranking around a term or a couple of terms that are particularly relevant to your program offerings, and you can own those terms, right? Essentially, you're getting that like free traffic. And if that traffic is also quality traffic, right? Like you're generating a new kind of, much more affordable inquiry than your program or programs might be used to generating. So while it's incredibly hard to do, if done right, it's kind of like getting free leads, so to speak. How would you sort of elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think a big piece of that is it's quality, right?
Yeah.
We know that if somebody's coming to this microsite, a degree it's a long cycle sales product. That sales cycle being longer, so you need multiple touch points to reinforce. So you're not just relying solely on organic or solely on paid, but when you're able to do organic well, what you're doing is you're bringing in, like you said, that free and quality traffic, but you're also reinforcing every other channel campaign, because when people come back to search for you, you're there. And I think, and then when we do look at like, enrollment numbers, like looking from lead to enrollment, how many people actually went from being just a lead to being an enrolled student, those numbers are often higher on the organic side.
Yeah.
Across the board, we just see, it's because, when we look at paid and the nature of paid traffic, we call that a push channel. So we're pushing traffic to a site. we're specifically focusing on the bottom of the funnel, high conversion oriented keywords, as where organic and search engine optimization, we're a pull channel. We specifically focus on pulling in leads over time and being able to fill out the whole funnel. So we at Archer we call that the student journey.
So well said. So well said. And I think that I love that sort of framework because it's a really helpful way of kind of thinking through the different roles that respective channels play in the student acquisition process. I loved your comment about sort of organic reinforcing some of your other channels. And the first thing that popped into my mind is like, if I see like a reel or like a video on Instagram or something like that, the odds of me actually clicking on that ad and like going to a landing page are pretty slim, to be honest. But what I often do is like, if it's a product or a service that I think is interesting, I might take a screenshot of it, right? So like I remember like the name of the product or service, and then later I might Google, right, that product or service's name and or something about it. Or if I forgot to take a screenshot, I might Google descriptors to describe the product that I saw. And that's where like organic has to come in, right? So like even though I didn't start my search for your product on Google, the video campaign that you put together on Instagram ultimately influenced that Google search that I conducted. And so I love that idea of like thinking about organic as a channel to reinforce the work that you're doing as a marketer in other respective channels.
Yeah, I think having that cross-channel approach, and really, I think when you get too focused on an individual channel, it's a bit challenging to really see the bigger picture, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we think about those marketing principles, and we think about what you brought up around, like, I see an Instagram ad, that right there, and Instagram ads starting a search, that attribution style, right? That's something that's been around since the very beginning of marketing. We think about a billboard and a billboard ad really generating a passive impression for somebody to then think about this and be, I see this billboard every day. It's the same thing when you think about these social media ads. I see this in my feed. I'm constantly seeing it. I might not be ready to buy now, but because of brand familiarity and it's being in my feed, I then go back to search and I say, okay, I'm looking for a specific brand because they built trust. I see them all the time. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think, just thinking about how organic can, not only drive traffic, but also support other channels is a huge piece of it.
Yeah, no, dude, I love that framework. So anytime someone starts talking about SEO, I feel like the conversation, especially for, new people, pretty quickly like graduates to talking about quote unquote like ranking factors, right? So like if you listen to any SEO podcast or you watch any video on like an intro to SEO, within the first 3 minutes of that podcast or that video interview, someone's going to bring up the term ranking factor. So like, can you, and obviously, ranking factors are what Google uses to decide how to evaluate and like make sense of content, right? So can you kind of walk us through what some of the most important ranking factors are today that higher ed marketers and admissions professionals really need to be paying attention to? I know that there are like a crap ton, but like if you could sort of like distill just a handful of ranking factors that you at least pay most attention to and you think that schools should as well, what are those ranking factors?
Yeah, so I think, I'm in the school of moving away from ranking factors, right? When we think about ranking factors, so when we think about ranking factors, it's almost as if there's like a list of very tangible things. And there are things that you can do. There are things like optimizing your content, that affect. But when we think about Google, it's more than just ranking factors nowadays. They're running multiple algorithms on certain types of keywords. So we're seeing an ever-changing evolution of search engine results pages. And what I mean by that is, they have natural language processing. They have all these different types of, the Penguin update looks at links. They have a product review update looking at the quality and the expertise. You have EAT, which is a ratings guideline, which is separate and external from these actual algorithmic ranking factors. So, there's a lot to really consider. And what I say first and foremost is, don't write for Google, write for your user intent. If you have expertise in-house, if you have a faculty member that's willing to help with this, include your faculty in content. Specifically, you have the smartest person in the room, use them. And I think then you can really get into the nuts and bolts of things. I think, when you work with content from its inception, you can identify a keyword, right? Understand the intent behind the keyword, but the content itself has to really speak to your audience and what they're looking for. It has to answer that question. I would say that's the biggest thing that, a lot of folks in marketing miss. And then, also, when you write some of this blog content, you want to make it really linkable. You want to make sure that, it's driving value, it's adding value for a prospective student. It's something, oftentimes you can, build resources or things like that create this shareability and make people want to actually share and spread this. And so I think for me, when I look at SEO content, I can't just say, oh, let's focus on title tags or let's focus on, page speed. Those things are nice when you really think about it. But it all starts with the quality of your content. If you don't have quality content, you're really not going to drive much relevant traffic that converts.
Hey, all, Zach here from Enrollify. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Mickey Baines, Jeremy Tiers, Jamie Hunt, Corinne Myers, Jamie Gleason, and many, many more. You can learn more about the Enrollify Podcast Network at podcasts.enrollify.org. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea. Find yours at podcasts.enrollify.org. Yeah, I want to unpack something you said because I thought it was really just an important note, and you sort of just squeezed it in there, but like writing for user intent. And I think that the way that like ultimately, right, what is Google trying to do? Google is trying to serve up quality answers to people's questions in a way that's meaningful. Google's also trying to keep people, right, like on their content, to keep people browsing, so that content doesn't need to just be a direct answer to the question. It also needs to be a comprehensive answer, right? Like where a user should be able to go to that, they click on that first result and they shouldn't hit the back button immediately. If they do, right, that's an indicator that they didn't really get what they were looking for, right? Like, and so I think that like what I love about what you just said is that this is something that everybody in higher ed can do, right? Everyone as a higher ed marketer or admissions professional understands or should understand their target student audience, and writing content in a way that's focused on what that person is looking for, yes, like what stage of the enrollment journey they're at. That is, while there's an incredible number of other factors and both technical and content components to consider here, if you do that really well, that's a, quote unquote free, easy way to ensure that you're building a rich SEO backed piece of content, or SEO proofed, I should say, piece of content. Would you agree with that, or anything you might want to add there?
I totally agree with that point. I think, it's when you're speaking to an audience and you're really getting that answer, Google's getting better at understanding, of course we want to make sure the content structure has its headings, has all these, these pieces together, but really the meat of it is answering the question and providing quality around that answer and in-depth knowledge and understanding of a topic. And Google values that. I think, they have another algorithm update that's going to be released soon called MUM, which is really trying to increase that expertise area of what we call EAT, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So they're really hyper focused on, do you know what you're talking about?
Yeah.
And do you talk about it in depth and with a quality that's not matched by anyone else on search engine results? So, yeah, I think that's a big piece.
Yeah. So I'd love your thoughts on like why is SEO strategy important in higher ed? So, we've hit on a couple things here where paid search is getting more expensive. Other channels are continuing to get harder and more complex. If someone can't find you with a simple Google search, like that basically means you don't exist today. So like there are all those like sort of like obvious problems, but like what else, like when you think about like why schools need better SEO, what comes to mind? Like, what is it that when a prospective client approaches you, right, and is asking like, hey Ray, like, what is this SEO thing, and like, why do I need this? Like, how do you respond to that, and why is it important that schools really start to better understand the power of good SEO strategy and its corresponding tactics?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different reasons in my mind. When I think about the user, I think about the prospective student. Um, lifetime value associated with these prospective students, specifically, is generally higher when they come in on non-branded, and you're able to nurture them through,
Yeah.
because you're providing them with all this different information that really resonates and builds trust in the brand. I think you're always going to have people who are searching for your brand plus program on search, and it's great to have that. That's the very bottom of the funnel, but that's such a small piece of the pie. And then from an organic ranking standpoint, I think we're seeing a more equitable search engine results page, right? So what's happened over time now, for a while, portal sites, these large portal sites were competing, taking over space. All these affiliate sites dominating rankings on programmatic keywords. But what we've seen is a shift where Google's now localizing search. So specifically in your area, if you're able to rank for a program related keyword, and then you're a well-known brand in your local area, that's going to be huge from an enrollment standpoint. That's going to be huge from students being able to access and find your program to get the information they desire. As opposed to a couple of years ago where it was just all affiliate sites and you were kind of blocked out of that top 10.
Yeah.
So I think, there's a great opportunity now as Google tries to understand, where are we evolving search. And, the last thing we want to see happen is, all of, a university's opportunities to completely be gated by like a Google. So I think owning your presence, because if you're not, Google's going to, take over that spot with something of their own. As they themselves are even getting into courses and offering these different sort of certifications, which are alternate education paths. So
just so I'm understanding this right, and so our listeners are as well. So when you talk about sort of like Google search, localizing search, right? Like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that means like, hey, if I'm in Southern California, right, and I Google, MBA programs or something like that. Like, while MBA program, that keyword, right, like, might actually the historically, whoever was ranking number one for MBA program or MBA programs, they could be wherever, right? Like it wasn't taking into account the fact that Zach's location was currently in Southern California. Now I'm going to be served up results that are local, right? If schools in that particular area around me are ranking well for that particular keyword, which sort of presents this additional advantage, right, for schools to start ranking for non-branded search terms that are a little bit more relevant to sort of the student experience. Is that accurate?
That's definitely accurate. I think you're seeing more schools in your area. They're because for Google it's always relevancy, right?
Yeah.
If I live in New York and I get served a program in Alaska, is that necessarily relevant to me? And what's the likelihood that I would actually attend that program? So they want to make sure that those results really match each individual user's personalization history.
Yeah.
So there's this piece here that we see that's a real great opportunity, and I've seen it specifically on quite a few university partners that are trying to rank for head terms like online MSW or online MEA, that they've actually seen an uptick locally because they're able to rank for those keywords in their general market, as where they might have been at the bottom of page one. Now they're more towards the top three.
Yeah.
So real great opportunity there.
Yeah, and I think what's exciting about that is like it gives folks the opportunity to create content around non-branded or even non-geo specific terms, right? Like I remember talking with folks even like 3 years ago, and it was like, hey, make sure write content around the best nursing programs in San Diego, right? Or something like that. And like, while I'm sure that there's always sort of a geo terms will continue to remain important to an extent. I think what's cool about this is like this relatively recent update is you don't even necessarily, like, if you're targeting if your demo is local and if people are searching for nursing programs, evening nursing programs, and they are just physically located, their phone, their laptop are physically located in Southern California, they're going to get served. The likelihood that your programs will start ranking well or ranking higher, even if the user doesn't include a geo-specific search term in their query, just goes way up. So what's cool about that, I think it just gives more people a fighting chance at ranking for those head keywords, whereas historically that might have been untenable for most people.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's a piece here, right? I think, especially if you're a smaller school and you have more nuanced programs, it really gives you a chance to rank well, in the state, in the region, and really drive that meaningful traffic. I would say when I hear the term best, I would just say, generally I would avoid things like best,
Yeah.
because those from an intent, they just imply lists, and those lists are generally dominated by portals. And the reason why you see when you have a superlative in your actual keyword, there's a bit of subjectivity. If you're a university and saying we're the best, unless you have your top 25 program on US News or something along those lines, which even that's a bit murky.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because I'm even thinking about like searching for restaurants, right? And you're 100% right. Like anytime I search for like best Italian restaurant, it's not like a restaurant is actually ranking number one for that. It's like Open Table or like Resi or something like that,
Yeah, it's the larger affiliate or niche style sites, and they generally put together their own sort of methodology to ranking these, whether it be most affordable or just these different styles of keywords that they'll use, to sort of to show that objectivity. But when we think about it from a university standpoint, we really want to focus on the head terms, and we also want to focus on UVPs that we can throw in, like our programs, no GRE or no GMAT, specifically focusing on those. Finding long tail variations of a keyword and trying to rank for those. I think the more nuanced we get, the longer tail we get with a keyword, the lower the competition, most likely. It's always a lower barrier for entry to start lower, and then seek to optimize for the head term, which has a higher volume.
Yeah. Love this. So I'd love for you to just share a little bit, Ray, about like schools that are coming to solicit SEO services from Archer. Like how what are these scopes of work look like? Like when a school recognizes, hey, we're not ranking super well for these particular terms, or they run their domain through like an SEMrush or like a Ahrefs tool or something like that, and like they find out that, oh wow, we're not ranking for any of the keywords, any of the non-branded keywords that we want to be ranking for, and they realize that they have a problem. Like what is the approach that you all are recommending folks take when it comes to implementing a better SEO strategy?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of nuance there. So I work on these quite a bit, where we will actually go through an opportunity analysis phase where we're doing a discovery with a prospective client to really understand what their needs are. We'll have meetings with them to really understand, hey, what terms do you want to rank for, and then I'll do a deep dive. I'll actually look at their I'll look at everything from existing content on site, existing rankings. I'll look at their technical SEO. I'll look at how the site's earning backlinks. What are those anchors pointing to those backlinks? So from there, I'll create a scope of work that generally will have a mix of our technical on-page content strategy and then like link building / content marketing pieces, based off of need. So basically it's a holistic and balanced approach to make sure that they're ranking for the specific program that they want to rank for, as well as building traffic over time that's relevant for that specific program.
And speaking of the sort of like technical and content components of SEO, can you just like for listeners who aren't really familiar with these two sort of like very important parts of the SEO whole, like what are sort of the technical components versus sort of the more content components of it?
Yeah, so technical components are essentially related to, any area of your website or technology that can limit Google's crawling and then indexing of the site. And when we say crawl, that means Google's actually sending a bot to your site. They're actually pulling all of your content, rendering it to understand how that content is answering a question or serving a specific intent, and then indexing is the decision making behind whether we include this in the index or not. So we'll look at things like XML sitemap, and we'll look at in broken internal links. We'll look at what's your page speed, how fast our load time, really understanding just a bunch of different areas. I mean, there's quite a few. There's also like HTTPS, is your site secure on all pages? Is it working properly? Do you have a meta robots tag on there that's basically saying no index this page by accident? So there's all these different kind of little things that we look at. Are there multiple versions of a page being included in a search, which is the canonical? These are just different sorts of things, that actions we do on the technical SEO side to make sure that we're pointing to one true page, it's able to be crawled, and then it's able to be included in the index. So with that first piece, that's kind of like, I call that the foundation, right? That's the foundation of, if you think of SEO as a pyramid, we really set the foundation at that technical SEO piece. We'll also look at what we call on page as the next layer up, where on page is looking at the pure HTML and understanding if our HTML tags are actually optimized for keywords, if they're optimized enough, if they support and reinforce the actual topic, if we're using structure of a page correctly. Are we interlinking with semantic anchors that actually pass equity, the maximum amount of equity from page to page? When I say equity, I mean what Google calls page rank. So we, once we have that's that next building block, that's where we go up to that content area. Now, content, it can be content marketing or content strategy. Content marketing, in an SEO sense, is really content that's focused on earning links. So rather than driving traffic, we're building content that earns links, so we can build what Google calls authority. So backlinks or hypertext links, or they could be image links or anything linking back to your site from another website. These actually pass equity and value from the other site linking to your site. When we earn links that are relevant and authoritative, that actually helps increase rankings. There's a correlation study behind the number of links earned and the amount of both organic traffic and organic keywords you rank for, and the ranking positions you rank for those. So link building is a huge piece. If we relate it back to that earlier question about factors, it's one of the most important factors. But I would say, we still want to focus on that quality.
Yeah.
But so we use that content marketing piece to really drive that authority side. On the content strategy side, that's what we refer to as a blog style strategy. So that's really us understanding and mapping out blogs that don't just rank for keywords, but they rank for keywords relevant around your program, relevant around faculty research, relevant around your brand, relevant around current events, relevant around decision making for a program. What can I do with an MSW? Is an MSW right for me, or is an MS in strategic business planning or something like that right for me? Like, having those styles of content then allow us to bring the right type of traffic. And then on that other side, with that content marketing piece, we're using those links and interlinking those links so that all of our content is rising up. And this all kind of drives the user down a path to that program page to get them into that transactional mind state. So we take them from an informational approach to moving them through strategic interlinking to that program page so that they're in a transactional place, become sign up as a lead, start an application, finish and submit that application, and become an enrolled student.
Well, there you have it, folks. That was a crash course in all things SEO. That was amazing, dude. I was like, you got to teach a course, man. This is everything that you just shared is like you made it seem almost as if it was like, yeah, you just do this and then this and then this and then this, and yet like that's the perfect system for like how to crawl, walk, run with respect to getting started. And I appreciated sort of like the tie-in too between like the content and the transactional, like the awareness and the transactional, because I think that is what's so hard for folks in higher ed to understand is like, it sounds like what you're saying is just go, create a bunch of content. If you build it, they will come. And it's like, no, you need to take a very focused, strategy here. And there needs like the content, ensuring that you've got good, long form blog content, pillar page content, whatever it might be, around keywords and clusters of relevant keywords. That's incredibly important to getting people to the site, right? And then once they're there, then you have to figure out how to get them to take the desired action, right? Whether that's submitting that inquiry form or applying or coming to your event or whatever it is. So I really appreciated the tie in there, because I think sometimes it's hard for people to wrap their minds around how SEO impacts enrollment, right? Like, and how critical SEO is to even like, the even quality app generation, not just the quantity of app generation, but ensuring that the quality of your app pool is increasing year over year. So I really appreciated that like comprehensive look at how all of this stuff works. I actually want to throw a few different scenarios at you now that I think will be just fun for our listeners who are all over the place, right? We've got people listening to this pod that like have probably never even heard of the term SEO before. And then we've got other people who are incredibly sophisticated and have 5-10 people working in their marketing and communications team that are just focused on SEO. So the gamut is quite wide here. So I want to throw 3 different scenarios at you and just get your off the cuff kind of random thoughts on like how you would approach this situation. Again, context is going to be limited here. Totally understand. Like there's no silver bullet. Everyone's situation is a little bit different. We get all of that, but just off the cuff, what are some like Ray's thoughts on how he'd start to approach each of these scenarios? So scenario 1 is an online business program that has $250,000, $250K to spend on increasing their visibility and rank around program specific keywords. So they want to increase quality lead generation in the next year. How do you think about advising them on how to build their SEO program?
Yeah, I think for me, it's with a 250K spend specifically focusing on programmatic keywords, I'm thinking about building out a hub around that program, and building out individual pieces of content or assets to support that. So when I mean a hub, you're literally creating a folder / program keyword that you're targeting, and then having all the component pages live underneath it as child pages. Really, focusing on creating a comprehensive approach to that whole hub, so that we're making sure that all the sum parts are actually in depth and all interlinked from that hub. And then also, I'd pump a lot of money specifically into the off-page SEO side, so that link building side, making sure that we're driving high quality links. I'd also look to include digital PR in that as well. I think digital PR is actually an underused channel. Really that.
What is that?
When you think about it,
what is digital PR?
So digital PR is interesting. It takes elements of traditional PR and takes elements of SEO. So if we have a Venn diagram, digital PR is directly in the middle. At Archer, I work with some great media relations specialists and that have built a lot of relationships with high-end publications, and we're able to really use faculty in a way to highlight the brand itself and highlight the program and build visibility. So I think and specifically they'll go out and pitch, and they'll get faculty members included in stories, and then we'll from a content side we'll actually use that faculty story to build out content around it. So it's a cohesive approach. When we do that, when we have that faculty member included in like a Washington Post or a Healthline or on US News or one of these larger publications. It just you're getting a placement on really high-end publications with lots of visibility.
Yeah.
And not only that, those publications are then syndicated by other sites across the web. So, there's humongous growth in terms of the audience now that's able to see your program.
Yeah.
So, and then from an SEO standpoint, purely from an SEO standpoint, we get really great backlinks from, high authority publications that really help pass a maximum amount of what we call page rank or link equity. So, I'd make sure that that's in that approach, as well as then us doing, our regular sort of link building one-to-one, specifically focused on a program, and then link building, creating assets that can actually pull in links over time.
Yeah. I love that. I love the digital PR piece, because I don't think, to your point, I don't hear as many people talking about that as they should. And to your point, like if you get a faculty member to go, write a piece that gets published in the New York Times, and the New York Times is linking back to your, website, right? Like that's a very credible, important link, right, for that content, whatever that content is. That makes a ton of sense. And I think a quick takeaway for those who are listening is like, what is the digital PR approach for your faculty members? Like, even if you find 3, 4, 5 of your all-stars, like how do you build a sustainable and yet like a proactive approach to digital PR strategy for those respective thought leaders, and within the context of their respective domains. So I love that idea. Scenario 2 here, right? So that's great approach. If you've got $250,000 to spend, most of the people listening to this pod probably don't have that they can allocate directly to just SEO. So thinking about scenario 2 here, right? You've got a small liberal arts college. They've got $50,000, right, to spend on increasing their visibility and rank around program-specific keywords to increase quality lead gen in the next 12 months. How do you approach this scenario, and how is it different, if at all, from scenario 1?
Yeah, I think just having a fifth of the budget, right? I think that's all. You're already hamstrung there. I think it's tough, right? If we think about 50K over 12 months, it's less than 5K a month availability for spend, right? And I think while we want to be mindful of focusing on content and expanding that funnel, I think a piece of this would mainly be us focusing on link building, especially if we want to focus on bottom of the funnel traffic that really converts. I think improving your program page, adding link building, and then adding a few support pieces around that program will be helpful. I do that on a much smaller scale.
Yeah.
But really the bulk of this, I could see about 60% of this going on link building, really driving links, and focusing on getting high quality links that pass that authority.
Yeah. I love that. It makes a lot of sense. Maybe that even looks like, getting a faculty member to go on an industry specific podcast that will then link back to your program page or something like that. Right. I think that there are digital PR components there too that can be, free, other than sort of just human capital time that's spent on doing that. But I love that. All right. Scenario 3, sort of the in-between scenario here. A large public school, they've got a budget of $150,000, and they want to increase visibility and rank on their 100 grad programs. So this is like, they're not just talking about a couple programs here. They're thinking about like grad school holistically and like graduate programs holistically. And they want to increase visibility and quality lead gen in about a year's time. They've got $150K. How do you advise they spend that cash?
Yeah, so I think when you think about it from a program standpoint, you're just diluting down your budget, right?
Yeah.
So if we think about 100 programs, 150K, so you have $1,500 for the year to spend per program. For me, I'd take a vertical approach. So, and what I mean by vertical is we create pages based off of an industry, targeting a specific industry. For example, if we have, business programs, creating a business vertical. If we have technology programs, creating a technology vertical. And then, specifically listing all the programs that we can underneath that vertical, while also creating a larger style page that just talks about the industry in general. and then we link build to that page. And the reason we do that is we specifically take that approach to pass equity, and we're maximizing budget. With 150K and the 1,500 per program, that alone won't really move the needle much.
Yeah.
So when we take this consolidated approach and we're able to say, okay, we have 3 verticals supporting these 100 programs, and we're able to link build to all these, we can then pass a much greater amount of equity. We're also able to write content that supports each of these verticals, which kind of then distills it down, allows us to interlink and keep users, or prospective students, I should say, on the site for longer, allowing them to explore and enter into your program.
Wonderful responses to all 3 of these scenarios, man. This is fantastic. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. You've given me some ideas, so I'll take it. I love it. Just a couple final questions for you, Ray. When you think about conducting keyword research and doing the work of establishing content strategy at the offset, like what tools do you recommend people use? Like, what are your favorite tools to use? Any tools you'd recommend a SEO who's working in-house at a college or university tap into in order to help craft sort of a solid game plan for their institution?
Yeah, so I use a couple. I use Ahrefs. I use SEMrush, Keywords Everywhere. I think I'll use Google Keyword Planner. They're all very similar, but they'll have different volumes based off of the methodology in which they calculate that volume.
Yeah.
But I think one of the most underused tools actually is Google Trends. Google Trends is really showing you the actual search interest over time and the rate of search interest. So you can actually see, all right, I may use a tool like Ahrefs, and it may say that there's 600 average searches a month, but that's averaged throughout the last 12 months. How do we know that that's necessarily accurate? We look in Google Trends, we'll put in the keyword, we can actually look and see what's the ebbs and flows, and you can actually see the specific geographies where this keyword is seeing increases or seeing decreases. I kind of take approach that, and then I also use the search engine results page itself. So as I take this keyword, right, and I'm like, okay, that's great, but then I look at who's ranking for this actual keyword. I actually go to the search engine results page and I try to understand what type of content dominates page 1.
Yep. And what can you learn from that, right? Like, how is the content structured? How many words are on the page, right? Is there a video there or not, right? What can you learn from the top ranking page on that keyword that you might be able to replicate in your own context?
Yeah, I always think about it from this approach. It's just, how can I make this better?
Yeah. Because if you can be better than the top ranking page, your ranking should, at least in theory, go up.
Yep.
So Ray, final question for you: If you could rank on any keyword for Ray Martinez, someone Googles Ray Martinez, and you could rank on anything, like what is the keyword that you'd want to rank for? I guess, sorry, I said that the wrong way. If somebody were to Google anything, any keyword, and Ray Martinez were to pop up as the first result, what would you want that keyword to be, that search term?
SEO.
Just SEO.
Just by itself. Just
SEO equals Ray Martinez. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, or even my own name. I mean, there are a million Ray Martinez's out there. But if you Google, I got the long tail. So if you Google Ray Martinez SEO, I'm number 1.
There you go.
But to rank for each of those separately, I'd be quite happy with that.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy life to come talk to us and share your ideas. Dude, these have been fire. Hopefully folks walk away feeling like they've learned more than just a thing or two about SEO. If folks want to reach out and learn a little bit more about you, ask you some follow-up questions, understand a little bit more about Archer's approach to SEO, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, so you can just send me an email at my Archer email. So it's rmartinez@archeredu.com. You can also visit archeredu.com as well. We have contact forms on there, but if you want to get directly in touch with me, that rmartinez@archeredu.com works.
Wonderful, and we will include that contact info in the show notes below. Well, appreciate your time, man. This has been great.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach.
Hey y'all, Zach here from Enrollify. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Enrollify Podcast. If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing, learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at enrollify.org.